Welcome to this episode of the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Today, I'm thrilled to have Bill Hawkins on the show. Bill is a globally recognized leadership consultant and coach who has helped countless executives elevate their performance and productivity. With decades of experience and a reputation for delivering practical, no-nonsense strategies, Bill's insights are truly game-changing. In this episode, we'll help you identify your natural coaching style and explore ways to balance performance and development. Bill shares how leaders can adapt their approach to meet the needs of their teams as well. Plus, we'll tackle the challenges like coaching employees through burnout, avoiding common coaching mistakes, and differentiating between mentoring and coaching. So grab a notebook because this episode is brimming with actionable advice that you can start using today to foster greater engagement, growth, and long-term success. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Through candid conversations and expert perspectives, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and practical lessons that shape exceptional leadership. Well, when it comes to developing high-potential employees, what are some of the key coaching strategies to help them transition from being individual contributors to leaders? Because that's a huge jump. And I hear this a lot from leaders to say, now they're being graded by a different metric. It's almost like a bait and switch. I got promoted to this position because of my individual skills. Now I'm being judged and graded based on my people skills, of which I have very little or haven't had enough training on.
What a great question. And in too many organizations, nobody ever tells the person that got promoted what you just told. You're absolutely right. Most people get promoted because they did a great job as an individual contributor. And most times when you get promoted, not always, but most times when you get promoted into a position of managing people, and you move from, you used to be successful because of the way you planned, you organized, and your work ethic and the way you went about doing business. And what you quickly discover once you've got people working for you is they don't plan the way you did. They don't organize the way you did. And some of them don't even have a work ethic with the way you did. And some of these people have problems at home. They've got health problems, they've got family problems, and you've got to manage productivity, okay, through all of this, right? And one of the key distinguishing characteristics that I talk to people about, okay, is that every time you get promoted, the criteria between being, yeah, you did okay, and you were very successful is going to change. And your very first promotion is, can you manage people? Okay? Can you deal with poor performers? Can you identify the talents and skills that need to be developed in these people? Okay? Can you motivate them? Can you get them to work as a team? All of these people things come into play for the first promotion. Then you get promoted a second time. Frequently, now you've got people working for you who have people working for them. What I typically tell the people I'm coaching is, once again, there are three things that distinguish, yeah, you did a good job, to you were a great middle manager. And the first thing that middle managers need to give up, okay, is that idea that they are technical masters of what they used to do 2 jobs ago, because you're not. Okay, there are people in this organization who know how to do that better than you do now because they do it every day and you don't. Give up the idea that you have technical mastery. Okay? Secondly, learn. There are 2 things left in the managing people arena that may still be important to you. One, how much direction do you provide your people? If you provide too much, you're micromanaging. If you don't provide enough, you're leaving them floundering. You've got to figure out how much direction do each of your people need, okay, where it's not too much, it's not too little, it's just enough for them to be effective. And lastly, you have to become a creative problem solver. Now, what I mean by that is those problems that you had as an individual contributor, those problems that you had as a first line manager, they seemed tough, didn't they? Looking back, not so tough. The problems that you get in middle management are difficult, and you have to learn that you can't approach them with the same old, same old. You need to learn to be creative in middle management. That is what is going to distinguish you from the crowd. And finally, you get promoted to senior management in your organization. You got to be strategic. You've got to learn to, and this is one of the things that in my coaching practice, I end up talking to people about. Because early in your career, you know what you're rewarded for? Being tactical. Early in your career, you're rewarded for solving problems, for getting the job done, okay? For your nose to the grindstone. And once you get to senior management, you've got to learn to look over the horizon, put the pieces of the puzzle together, and deal with it in a strategic way. Okay. And sometimes even people who are naturally strategic, that's been beaten out of them in individual contributor and first line management. Okay. But you got to learn to be strategic. Next, you got to learn to handle ambiguity. Okay. By the time you get to senior leadership, all of the decisions that you need to make are going to be difficult. And you won't have enough information. I wish I could count the number of times I've heard seniors tell me, senior leaderships people tell me, I have to make a decision on this and I don't have enough information to make that decision. Okay, that is going to happen to you invariably. So learn to make decisions without enough information, okay, and deal with the ambiguity in those situations. And lastly, recognize when problems are too big. Too big for what? One person. There are times where you need to put one person on this project. If I put a team on it, it's going to feel bureaucratic. Okay? What I do is I put Charles on this. He knows what to do. He'll figure it out. He'll make this happen. That's the most effective thing I can do. There will be other times where this is not a one-person problem. I need to put a team on this and learn the difference between the two. That'll distinguish you at senior level. So you're kind of, the answer to your question is it varies at each level of management. And frequently, leaders aren't told what the rules are at each level. Great question.
That's some powerful strategies for leadership growth. I like how you break it down by leadership level because I agree with you. At those transitioning into being a people manager, they have a micro manager focus. They don't delegate enough. But when you get into those senior ranks, you're right. It's all about being strategic and not so operational. And it's hard to get leaders to get out of the weeds and look at it at different perspectives, at different heights, to be more strategic in their thinking. So great insights, Bill. Thank you. Now let's look at some of the practical tools leaders can use to make their own coaching even more impactful. And one of those tools you advocate is the 6-question coaching process for seasoned employees. Could you walk us through that approach and how it drives engagement and productivity?
Happy to do it. And the reason why I like it so much is it's time effective. Okay. At this point in my career, I mostly coach very senior level people, and there aren't enough hours in the day to do what they need to get done. And on top of that, they get feedback that a lot of these companies have engagement surveys, they have employee opinion surveys, right? And they find out that the people who are working for them could use a little bit more attention. And the good ones among them go, oh, I know they do, but there just aren't enough hours in the day. And I go, you are in luck. I have got a tool for you that sucks up very little time and is going to tackle every one of those issues. And it's called the 6-question technique. And my most successful story on this was a CEO of a company in New York. The CEO lived in Connecticut, okay, which was about a 45-minute drive. And what he did, he traveled internationally. The people on his team from an employee opinion survey gave him reasonably low scores in terms of describing big picture for them, exactly what the organization was doing. How did they fit into this? Were they getting any kind of coaching or development for their own personal careers? They felt abandoned and lost, if I can be so bold as to say that. And he said, I can do better. So what he did was he came up with this idea of he took a limo into work every day, kind of showed up at his house about 6:45 a.m. And he said, I'll tell you, I've got this 45-minute drive, okay? What I'll do is I'll have one of my employees in the car at 6:45 a.m., okay? And we can do all this 6-question stuff on the way into work. Now, I wish I could have told you that I said, what a great idea to him. What I actually said was, well, most of your employees actually live in Manhattan, right? So in order to be in a limo at 6:45 in Connecticut, I can't even imagine what time they have to get up in the morning to do that. But I'm not so sure this is a great idea to motivate your people. And he said, yeah, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. So he did it. I could not have been more wrong. His people ate it up with a spoon. 45 minutes of undivided attention from the CEO, not talking about problem du jour, but talking about me, the company, the career, the direction of the company, my people. Okay? His scores went from mediocre at best to some of the top in the company, and he did it with a 45-minute drive about once every, you ready for this? Once every couple of months. That was all it took. Once every couple of months, he went through these 6 questions with his people. First question, where is the organization going? Let me spend some time talking to you about what are we doing, big picture. Are there acquisitions? Are there mergers? Are there changes in the compensation structure? Are we going to partner with other people here? Are we going to change? Just let the people know what kind of things are coming down the line so that they can appear knowledgeable when their people ask them questions. Secondly, how do you and your team fit into all of this? Now, this is a key element because no matter what part of the organization you're in, whether you're in finance, whether you're in human resources, right? Here's where you have the opportunity to say, so you can see from where the organization is going and what we have planned, how important sales and the sales team is to this. You can see by what we're talking about, where the company is going and what we're going to be doing, how important human resources will be. There will be opportunities for growth. There will be opportunities for promotion. There will be opportunities for your people to try and do new and different things, get involved in things, right? Okay. So this is where you have the opportunity. Question 1, here's what we're doing. Question 2, here's how you and your team fit into all of this. Question 3, positive feedback. Okay, here's a little positive feedback for you and your team. Now, he took this to another level. In fact, I call that other level, he took it to the stratosphere. Because what he did was he not only took positive feedback to the person that he was sitting in the car with, he then said, is there anybody on your team who has done anything, okay, since the last time we did this a couple of months ago, that might deserve some recognition? Now, if you're talking to very senior level people here. If you don't have anybody on your team who's done something extraordinary, you got another problem. You got a more difficult problem, right? There should be somebody on the team who has done something. Then what the CEO would do was go back to the office after this ride to the bar and immediately send an email to that person saying, I just had a discussion with Charles, your boss, and he told me what a fantastic job you did at X. I just want to tell you how proud I am of you, how much we value you as an employee in this organization, and appreciate the work that you do. How long did that take him to do that? Seconds, right? What did it mean to the person? This is one of those emails you keep in a file, right? Okay, forever. And intuitively, what does this person think of their boss now? My boss just told the CEO what a great job I'm doing. Gee, my boss is pretty cool. Okay. So what the CEO managed to do was recognize and reward people in the organization and make their direct reports look good. Okay. Item 4, what can I do better? Okay. What can you do better? Statistically, 20% of people are actually motivated by the boss telling them what can they do to improve. Okay. So let the person know even though all these things are going wonderfully, what can you personally do to improve? Okay. And then give ideas on what to do. Okay. Then item number 5, how can I help you do that? Okay. On the item that you pick to improve, what is it that I can do to maybe help you improve in this area? And then the very last question of the 6, what can I personally do to be a more effective leader in this organization? Right? 6 questions. The CEO took 45 minutes. I've had people tell me they can complete all 6 of these in 20 minutes. Are you willing to donate 20 minutes every month or two to make your people feel recognized, rewarded, engaged, and up to date on everything the organization is doing? Okay? It's a wonderful tool.
And you're right, these conversations ensure that employees feel appreciated, informed, and respected. And you have another great tool called the Feed Forward tool. That's another fascinating concept that you champion. How can leaders effectively integrate this tool into their coaching conversations to focus on future development rather than past mistakes?
You got it. And in fact, I kind of alluded to this when I was talking about what do you do when people have run into trouble. So this feed forward can be a great tool for coaching people who maybe have run into trouble. It could be a great tool for managing those burned out people, okay, who need some problem solving. So it's a great tool for coaching. It's also a great tool for development, right? Is that one of the most important skills that leaders need is the ability to provide feedback to their people. And yet research after research after research shows we don't do enough of it. We don't provide enough positive feedback, and Lord knows we don't provide enough constructive feedback. And in fact, if a lot of people were raised like I was, my father used to say to me, Bill, if you don't have something good to say about somebody, and I bet you can finish that, just
Don't say
don't
anything at all.
say anything at all, right? And now we find ourselves, okay, as a leader in an organization where we do have to tell people their performance needs improvement, and it's difficult. It's against my personal values, okay? So what people do is we delay, we procrastinate, okay, hoping people will get better, we won't have to deal with this, and people don't like giving feedback. Feed forward, on the other hand, seems to be, I have done this with, between this Marshall guy and I, we've done this with over 50,000 people. And at the end of having them practice this, okay, we ask the crowd, well, what was that like? And typically people have very positive expressions, right? They don't say it was embarrassing or awkward or difficult. They say, in fact, people say, this is kind of fun. So what we do is have people identify something they would like to do better, something they would like to improve. And when I'm demonstrating this in a class, I said, it could be personal. I want to be a better listener. Could be something professional. I want to delegate more effectively. And then when we say the rules of feed forward is the person who you're talking to, asking this question, cannot visit the past. Okay? They can only provide helpful suggestions for the future. Okay? And when you get those helpful suggestions, you're only allowed to say 2 words. Thank you. You're not allowed to say things like, no, I've already tried that. What else you got? No, you just say, thank you. And what it does is, for instance, if you're using this for developmental process, right? Or how about, let me have even better. Let's go back to the person who has run into trouble and the boss doesn't have a clue how to solve this problem. So what you do is you have that person on your team go to other people in the organization and say, here's my situation. What suggestions you have for that I could pull me out of trouble on this one? And then they write them down. They say, thank you. Now you bring them back to the boss and you've maybe talked to 10 people and you got 10 different suggestions. The boss can then you sit down and discuss some of these potential solutions that you may not have thought of yourself. And in fact, what I typically say to people after they've done this in one of my classes is, how many of you got a suggestion in that 8 to 10 minutes that I gave you that passed my following list of criteria? One, you would not have thought of this yourself. This has got some unique twist. You wouldn't have come up with this suggestion yourself. And secondly, how interesting does it look that, good grief, you might try it? 80%, 8 out of 10 people say that if they ask people for suggestions, they will get some that they would not have come up with themselves that look interesting enough they might try it. And once again, it's effective, it's time efficient, and people say it's kind of fun rather than being awkward and uncomfortable. So the 2 favorite tools that I have in my coaching practice is the 6-question process we just talked about and this feed forward process that helps you solve problems you can't solve yourself.
And these tools are fantastic for driving immediate impact. Let's talk about the bigger picture, how leaders can create development experiences to foster long-time growth. So you've mentioned that development experiences often involve challenges like fixing a struggling project or starting something new. How can leaders intentionally embed these challenges into their team's work?
Yeah, that's one of the more is that basically what research shows, and I'm talking if you've got aspirations for the corner office. I'm not talking about you just want to get promoted from individual contributor to first line manager. But when I've got people who want to they're ambitious. They would really like to have a corner office job. I say, okay, there's 4 skills that you need to develop to get there. And the first one is managing people that we've talked about, right, in the past, right? And what you have to do is you have to prove that you can identify talent. Yeah. As Collins said in his book, Good to Great, got to get the right people on the bus. You have to get a reputation for assessing talents in people. You have to get a reputation for, can you motivate people? Can you engage people? Can you get them to work harder than they might have worked? Okay, because they work for you. That whole people thing, right? That's the first thing you have to distinguish yourself out as managing people. Next, start something from scratch. And if you remember, one of the challenges that I mentioned before was you have to learn to deal with ambiguity at a senior level. How do you get people prepared to deal with ambiguity if they haven't had to deal with ambiguity? Well, start something from scratch. It doesn't have to be something big. It can be working in a new location. It can be a new product, a new team, a new thing. But get them working with something new where they don't have all the information that they need. They don't have all the resources that they need. Okay? And they have to make decisions without enough information, right? Start something from scratch, and it can be something little. It can even be a team, but something they haven't done before. The next one we talk about is fix it. If you want to have one of those corner office situations, somewhere in your career, you need to have had a project where it usually sounds like this: Charles, it's broken, fix it, right? And this is where you have to come out in an organ, and anytime that something is broken, invariably there are injured relationships. There's injured relationships inside the organization and external to the organization. And what you learn is you've got to learn to deal, okay, with those broken relationships. You got to learn to deal with things that are highly visible. Okay, you're going to be under a microscope on this one. Got to learn to work under pressure. And once again, it doesn't have to be when you're trying to develop your people. It doesn't need to be a major thing that needs fixing, but just anything that's broken, a broken system, okay, a broken team, okay, broken relations with customers, something that's broken that needs to be fixed, that gives somebody an opportunity to show how do you fix problems. And lastly is learn to influence without authority. One of the counterintuitive things about leadership is your opportunity to pull out the power card to get done what you need to get done is first line leadership. When you manage a bunch of doers, okay, and you are a first line manager, you can pull out the power card and say, do this, do that, because you work for me, right? Every promotion after that, you're going to have to learn to influence people who don't necessarily work for you. Till eventually your CEO. Let's take a look at that poor CEO, back to the 3 to 5 components that that person may be responsible for. How many can that CEO pull out the power card versus influence without control? Well, you've got all the people inside the organization. That's the power card. They work for you. You can use some influence to do that. The CEO also needs to learn to influence customers. That's without power. The board of directors. That's without power. Wall Street, once again, without power. Of the key constituencies that need to be influenced by CEO, 3 out of 4 of them are going to be without power. You know, if you want that job, you better learn along the way, how can I influence people without the power card? Okay? And it doesn't have to be big projects, but it has to be but it has to be projects that are oriented toward influencing without power, fix something, okay, that's going to be put pressure on people and be highly visible, and start something from scratch that's going to require making decisions without enough information and dealing with ambiguity. That is preparing people for top-notch jobs.
Love those insights. And I also realize that high pressure tasks can be intimidating for many managers, especially as they go up through the ranks. How can leaders coach individuals through that discomfort of taking on these challenges while ensuring they feel supported and empowered?
And once again, it comes down to what I tell people. Like, how many tools have I given you today, right? A bunch, I hope, right? I hope I've given you tools and insights and all that. And what I tell people I'm coaching is I'm going to give you all kinds of stuff. I'm going to give you tools. I'm going to give you metrics. Okay, I'm going to give you research. None of that replaces knowing your people. You've got to know your people. Okay? And what is going to be stress for them and what is not going to be stress for them? How are they going to react to stress? How are they going to react to new assignments? And then when you see that people are potentially stressed, right, is now you help break those problems down into doable parts, right? And if it's a major big project, it's going to have subparts to it. And some of those, right, is like, I know that you're concerned about this, but it basically breaks down into 5 parts. And this part over here is something you've done before. And this part over here doesn't look too difficult either. So this thing that looked like it was almost unmanageable, 2 out of 3 of those, okay, you got in your hip pocket. So now we're talking about just 3. How do we tackle those? And you, as a leader, to prepare people for these challenges and the support and encouragement they need, it's planning together, right? How do we together, okay, put together the necessary resources, the right team, okay, and the right format to make this happen?
Bill, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Your expertise in coaching and mentoring offers such valuable guidance for leaders looking to make a meaningful impact. Before we go, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
Well, probably the best place is my website, which is hawkinsconsultinggroup.com. And I've got videos, I've got articles that I've published, and lots of people who I've coached, okay, in terms of testimonials for what is the approach and how well has it worked. And it's always a pleasure working. I've worked with IMS for going on 20 years. It's a wonderful organization.
Thank you, Bill. Really appreciate it. Thank you for your time today. Thank all of you for listening. Until next time, remember, it's not what you know, but what you do consistently that makes a difference. I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.